Hikers and campers of Reddit, what were your most scary or life-threatening experiences while camping? Story 1. Sketchy homeless stranger turns up to our camp. First off, I love to camp. Been doing it my whole life. Never had a scary experience until this past summer. My boyfriend and I decided to go out to the gorge for some quality time camping. We had always gone with several other people, but this was the first time it was just us two. When we got out of the car to prep our gear for the mile hike back to the camping spot, two sketchy-looking dudes came out of the trailhead, eyed us, and went on to their old-school VW camper van. I had a weird feeling but shrugged it off and proceeded back to our camping spot. I had previously camped in the same area a handful of times and knew it pretty well. Once we got back there, I knew of a handful of different camping spots and proceeded to check them all out for the one that would be ideal for us. I noticed what looked like someone camping further up the hill, so I picked a spot a little further down where we'd be mostly out of sight. Not out of earshot though, as I heard him yelling with someone else back over on the trail. It was starting to get dark by the time we got everything set up, so I figured I'd start looking for firewood. Suddenly, this guy appears out of nowhere and asks us if we'd like any help and offered to sell us a bundle of firewood for $10. I laughed because we were in the woods, thus surrounded by wood which I could pick up off the ground. Dude, for free. He then said I wouldn't find much wood because they'd already cleared it out over the past few weeks. Few weeks? I asked him how long he'd been camping up there and he said almost a month. The longest anyone can camp in this area, a national forest, is 2 weeks. I already had the creeps about him and he claimed he was up there by himself. I asked him why I heard him yelling with someone then and that he had referred to more people when talking about the wood. He stammered and was like, "Oh well, yeah, there's some dudes I know camping over there up on the other side of the river." Then he proceeds to tell us that he's been lonely since he arrived. He was from Pennsylvania, took a bus to Lexington, Kentucky, and had been living in the woods back behind where I currently work. Coincidental. I knew exactly where he was talking about because I see homeless people, immigrants, and drug addicts coming in and out of those woods every day. So basically, he was a homeless man who somehow got a ride out to the gorge and decided he would just live there instead. He had been living on snakes, bugs, and selling firewood for food, beer. But he said we were the first people he'd seen in a few weeks. His stories were all over the place and I knew he was lying about a lot of what he told us. He wasn't alone even though he claimed to be. He even took us to his camp where there was tons of stuff for several guys. Not just one. He said he liked camping up top where he could see everything, and everyone. Then showed up our campsite. He had a straight shot view. By now it was dark and he helped us get a fire going. I was trying to politely get him on his way back up the hill so I could have a minute to process all of this. When he left, I started whispering to my boyfriend that there was no way in hell I could sleep with that lying sketchy homeless creep right up the hill. We didn't have a gun, knife, or even dog to protect ourselves if we needed to. I said let's quietly get our stuff together and get the hell out of here. Which we did, only we left our new tarps set up because they would make too much noise and he'd know we were leaving. As soon as I stood up with my pack, ready to get the hell out of Dodge, he yells, "How's it going down there?" And we proceeded to GTFO as quickly and quietly as possible. In my mind we were either getting robbed, raped, killed, or something because he was not alone. His stories didn't add up and his background of where he came from made me believe he was running from something and was trying to hide by living off the grid. I called the Rangers the next morning and told them about him. Luckily all he got from us was a set of new tarps. Story 2. Surviving hypothermia, storms and black bears. I've had a fair number. I'd say the most life-threatening thing was becoming hypothermic out in the middle of nowhere, unable to make a fire because my hands didn't work, and everything was either soaked or green. But that's not very provocative. The other big one that comes to mind at the moment was when I was camping during a derecho storm, the one that swept through West Virginia a while back. For those who don't know, a derecho is basically a big wall of super fast-moving wind that rips up trees and can push small buildings over, among other things. It doesn't sound too bad, but trust me, it is incredibly unnerving when you're in the middle of the forest, surrounded by trees. Unfortunately, though, that wasn't the scariest part of the night. Long story short, I had set my tent up in a single-walled pavilion, so I felt mostly protected from flying debris and falling trees. But unlucky for me, a big black bear apparently also decided to find shelter under this very same pavilion. And suffice to say, it was not happy sharing the space. Now, I've had plenty of bears outside my tent at night while camping, but this was particularly frightening because as this scared angry bear ran circles around my tent seemingly deciding what to do with me, I could hear its claws clacking against the cement slab foundation of the pavilion. With each galloping stride I heard the tap tap tap, tap tap tap, tap 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 of its massive claws, accompanied nicely with intermittent huffs and puffs of anger and confusion, along with the calming sounds of gale-force winds ripping up the forest around me. That was one of the scariest nights of my life, and to this day one of the only times I haven't been able to successfully scare a black bear away. Usually, they're all a bunch of cowards, but the storm had apparently riled this one up so much no amount of guttural screams and strong language seemed to do anything. It just continued running circles around me, sometimes leaving the pavilion for a few seconds only to immediately return, just as angry as ever, and I just had to wait it out, opting to pass the time by duct taping my hunting knife to my hand, should worse come to worst. Story 3. Unintentional jump scare while hiking at night. That reminds me of my bro and I hiking at night. We saw this young couple with a lantern in the distance walking down the road as we got off the trail. We waved at them when we were within 50 feet away from them and then just kept walking. Suddenly I hear, "Oh my GAAAWWWD." As we walk by the couple. My bro and I are like, "What? Is something wrong? Do I have something on my face?" The girl said that they didn't see us until we were 10 feet away from them. We were hiking without flashlights. It was a good lesson teaching my bro that natural night vision sees further than artificial light at night. It also doesn't give your position away to people who could be stalking you. The downside is that you become the scariest person on the trail. Story 4. Close call during a canyon fall accident. I was exploring several miles off the trail out in Palo Duro Canyon when the ground gave out from under me, and I slid down inside a narrow chute in the ground. The ground is just red clay and rocks up there, just a big empty desert, full of little caves. My backpack jammed me between the two walls before I slid too far down into it, and I was able to shimmy up and out. It was terrifying. I kept sliding back down on the loose, dry clay. The area's already remote, but being so far off trail, I truly don't believe I would have been found. I tried to take my wife out there once I made it back to camp to show her, and couldn't find it, even though I knew where it was. Easily the most dangerous, terrifying experience I've had camping or hiking, and I love exploring caves. Consent is important even when spelunking. Story 5. Hostile encounter and chase in a remote Wyoming beach. Back in 2021, my husband and I were camping in Wyoming at the Boysen Reservoir. We got lucky and were able to book a beach front site directly leading to the water, but the downside was that it was very, very far away from the other campsites. We were essentially isolated from everyone else, at the time, though it sounded like a dream come true. The thing about Wyoming is that it's so desolate to the point where it's pitch black and eerily dead silent once the sun is gone. We set up our camp, enjoyed our fire, but shortly after that, a random SUV with blacked out windows came driving down our road and into our site. They drove towards us. My husband tried to wave to them in case they were lost and needed help, but instead they ignored us and drove down to the beach, stayed there for 5 minutes, turned around and went back up the way they came. We immediately got a bad vibe. My husband told me to throw everything in the car and he kept shining a flashlight towards the beach because we had a feeling they dropped someone off to watch us. After we packed up, we got in the car and hauled ass. Lo and behold, the same car drove back into our campsite, and when they saw us leaving, they actually started chasing us. Mind you, the roads in Wyoming are bumpy and unkept when you're in the wilderness. On top of that, enormous wildlife that wanders in and out of the streets. My husband said, "I have to go fast. Are you okay with that?" And I said, "Just go and get us out of here." We were easily going 80 miles per hour down these windy roads and even through a canyon. They were on our tail for about 10 minutes until we lost them after passing through the canyon. Most terrifying experience of our lives. We think about it to this day and wonder what could have happened if we didn't listen to our gut at that moment. Story 6. Spooky encounter in the middle of the night. My family went camping every summer when I was growing up. We usually bounced between Virginia Beach, Assateague, and this god-awful place called Westmoreland. One trip we were in Assateague, near the beach, and we had 2 tents set up in different parts of the site. Sometime in the middle of the night my mom woke up, which woke me. She was sitting up straight but completely still, and I looked over at what she was staring at. In the moonlight there was the silhouette of what looked like an old woman looking into our tent. Long wiry hair and everything. I was young, so it terrified me, and I started asking my mom what that was, who was outside. Once I made noise, it spooked the old woman, and she took off. That was when we realized she was actually one of the feral ponies that live on the island. We had set up that tent on one of their trails, and they were going down to the beach. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more crazy stories.